Welcome to the Lou Riley Live Show, a podcast about health, wellness, motivation, and success. Now, here's your host, Mr. Lou Riley.
Thank you. You're far too kind. Folks, this is Lou Riley coming at you live with my studio audience from Nashville, Tennessee. Today's date is June 3rd, 2013, and once again, what an awesome day to be alive. This is a day that has never been here before, will never be here again, so we've got to make the most of it. We don't want to miss out on any part of what we're supposed to get out of this day. And with that being said, I want to share some information with you, of course, with this podcast episode. Once again, a little housekeeping. Want to ask you to go to iTunes, type in Lou Riley Live, and click the subscribe button. You guys with cellular phones, with iPhones, with smartphones that have the podcasting applications where you can subscribe to various podcasts, and they're kept inside one app. And when you open that app, you can click on the different podcasts that you like to hear. Whenever you want to hear it, whether you're driving or exercising or cleaning the home, make sure you subscribe to Lou Riley Live's podcast and make sure that I'm a part of that playlist, all right? So with that being said, let's go. I want to share with you some things about success. Today's about success, about motivation. It's about a good word. It's about a good message. I'll begin here. I came across an article from Inc. magazine several weeks ago that lists the top 10 motivational books of all time. And I didn't have a chance to read it, but I have a little practice that I do where I can save. Sometimes I'll just email myself articles or links to an article that I can read later. There are other apps, a couple of other apps where I can send them to that app, and it'll set it up in sort of like an online a reading post or an online newspaper kind of situation it'll set it up in, where I can read those things later. So, again, this article from Inc. magazine, let me see if I can find the date on March 22nd, 2013. And it talks about the top 10 motivational books of all time. And I'll just share the list. Number 10, by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Number 9, by Dale Carnegie, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. Number 8, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Number 7, give me 1 second, I gotta click next. Number 7 is Awaken the Giant Within by Anthony Robbins. Number 6, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Number 5, The Greatest Salesman in the World by O.G. Mandino. Number 4 is Don't Sweat the Small Stuff by Richard Carlson. Number 3 is Drive by Daniel H. Pink. Number 2, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And number one is simply insert your favorite book here. And that's what I want to start to get into the meat of this podcast episode is I want to insert my favorite motivational book. And that would be The Alchemist by Paulo Coehlo. And I want to encourage anyone who has never heard of the book, never read it, please do yourself a favor. Just buy this book, read it, open up your heart and mind, and receive the gift that's been given here. And I'm not going to necessarily summarize the book, but I want to give you some great information from the introduction of the book. I'm going to read verbatim. I may talk a little bit on it, but it is so appropriate. And what excited me so much about this book, and kind of the same thing with other motivational books that I really enjoy, is that when I started seeing, in principle, the very same things that I had concluded about life and about success and about achievement, it gave me a sense of, wow, I'm really on point with this stuff. You know, whatever someone else went through and saw and concluded, I started to see and conclude the same things that these people did. And it really made me feel like I wasn't so crazy. I wasn't so much an oddball, but that my thinking and what I was concluding, my philosophies as I was developing them, were very much the same as others who had been here before, who've been here way before me, and who've done much the same. So I guess somewhere that means that I need to be writing my own book. I know that's going to come, but right now I'm fueling up. Let's put it that way. I'm fueling up. So let me just share, and this is just so important. And I've talked before about, finding your place in life, finding your place, finding your purpose, and growing spiritually, which was shared with me as your only two responsibilities. And it's been said in many other ways. Some say your only obligation is finding your place. There's so many ways it's been said. But I want to really go into this. And the question here is asked, what's your personal calling? And their definition, or Mr. Cello's definition, is that your personal calling is God's blessing. It's the path that God chose for you here on earth. Whenever we do something that fills us with enthusiasm, we are following our legend. However, we don't all have the courage to confront our own dream. And the question's asked, why not? And that is so on point, that we all have been given a purpose. And for those of us who've had an opportunity to tap into it and to start to go after it, or some of us have tapped into it, but we never go after it. And I don't want to I'll add some of my own stuff, but this is just so on point. Just listen. It says, why are we afraid to confront our own dreams? Are we afraid of the dreams? Or are we afraid of the work involved? Well, here's some things that author Paulo Coehlo concluded. He says that there are 4 obstacles. He said, first, we're told from childhood onward that everything we want to do is impossible. We grow up with the idea, and as the years accumulate, so do the layers of prejudice, fear, and guilt. There comes a time when our personal calling is so deeply buried in our soul as to be invisible, but is still there. Growing up in the inner cities of Charleston, South Carolina, grew up in a neighborhood called Alchemist, which was in the north area. I love where I grew up. I love the person that it helped shape me to be. But it helped shape me by way of in order to sharpen the knife, it's gotta grind against a rough edge or a stone. And while I can say very many positive things about where I grew up and how I grew up, the people I grew up around, there's a flip side to that. And one of the things is, and it's kind of similar when it comes to a lot of inner cities across the country, maybe across the world, is that I would describe it this way. There was never a shortage of people who were ready to tell you what you could not do. Never a shortage. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I can remember anytime it seemed as though you stepped up to be a little more than what you grew up around, and not in an arrogant sense, but in a sense that, hey, I'm just following my destiny, following my legend, like Paulo Coehlo talked about. There were people who were always ready, waiting, and willing to throw darts. Always telling you what you wouldn't do. Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Man, I want to play pro football for the Dallas Cowboys. Man, you're not going to ever play no pro football for the Dallas Cowboys. Hey, man, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to play college football. Man, you're not going to play football. Man, those dudes are too big. They're going to mess you up. You're not going to play football. That's a true story. You're not going to make it on that team. Played college football, by the way. But another story. And I could only say that there were so many of us who were told what we could not do. And at some level, somewhere, some of us started believing that. And not only believing in what we could not do, we believed that the things that others dreamed to do, they could not do as well. And we spread that poison around and around. There were few, little to no people or entities or things or nothing to insert to stop that vicious cycle that we were perpetuating. And when the norm, golly, it's so many, and I'm skipping, but it's so many things in my head. I can remember, and this sounds crazy to me now, but I can remember that if you were cool, you hung up by the bathroom wall where they would slip in and maybe smoke a cigarette or what have you. You'd hang by the bathroom wall, you'd be cool, you watch the girls or whatnot, but you'd go to class later or try not to go to class at all. That wasn't a part of my world. And I can remember hearing things like, you think you're better than everybody else because you're going to class, because you're making good grades. And this is a true story. And I'm sitting here when I consider that now, I'm like, wow, what a job someone or something has done on our minds, so that there need not be any outside influences to retard or to enslave one's mind, because that energy has been placed inside there and been made to perpetuate itself over and over and over again until it's already embedded within that neighborhood, within the type neighborhood that I grew up in. That was already there. So therefore, the flip side of it is, it's accepted to not be successful. It's acceptable to not be your best. It's acceptable to be less. It's acceptable to not have. It's acceptable to not do. It's acceptable to not dream. And that is crazy. That is crazy. But let me tell you, that is how I grew up. That is how a lot of you listening to me grew up, whether you were on one side of it or the other side. Anytime you stood out, you were ridiculed. You were made to feel as small could be, and you learned right away, well, shoot, let me see if I can blend in. You learned right away. The easiest way to survive was to assimilate. Now, some people took assimilation to the nth degree and actually became the negative things, and some people learned how to operate within that. And there were others who learned how to, sometimes you had to learn to laugh at yourself. Sometimes you had to be the butt of jokes. I can remember I used to be called yard guard. Yard guard. Why? Because my folks wouldn't let me come out of the house but so much and no more. Or I had to stay inside the yard. The joke was, well, he has to stay inside the fence, so he's got to guard the yard. I can remember I had a bicycle, but in order for me to ride my bicycle in the streets, I couldn't go throughout the neighborhood at a certain point in my young life, as I was a young boy. I couldn't travel throughout the neighborhood by myself. I had to stay on my street. And on my street, my granddad or someone could sit on the porch and watch me ride from stop sign to stop sign. Compared to streets, our street wasn't that long in my neighborhood. Our individual streets weren't that long. The side streets were longer, but the individual streets weren't that long. So you could literally sit on the porch and look at one stop sign to your left and the other to the right. And someone had to be out there to watch me ride my bicycle. When I played outside, I played in the yard and didn't come out. So I got teased for that. And a lot of times people don't have that makeup or that metal, if you will, at that time to withstand that and to laugh. But I guess that's where part of my sharp tongue came from, because you had to learn how to defend yourself verbally when you were on the school bus. So understand that the school bus was driven by students at that time. So my bus going to, I want to say, was it middle school? I guess it was the same bus for high school, bus number 7. I can remember growing up, I remember getting on the school bus and there being a layer of marijuana and cigarette smoke on the top side of the bus. Literally. I can remember, if you sat in the back of the bus, you were a bad dude. You were a tough guy. You were, and it's crazy because I knew all the dudes who were on the bus who were quote unquote tough guys and bad guys, and my experience for the most part, those were some good dudes. Everybody had their own circumstances and situations that they dealt with in their home, and some had more leniency than others. But these people to a core weren't bad people. but they responded to the circumstances in a particular way. And at the end of the day, we're all going to be responsible for how we react to our condition. Okay? So here again, to piggyback on what started this, I'm giving you the 4 obstacles that prevent us from fulfilling our dreams, that prevent us from living our dreams, finding our personal legend, becoming what we're supposed to become. The 4 things that keep us from answering our personal call. And as I hear this, I guess this is going to turn into a 4-part series, because I've got some time left, but definitely not enough time to cover all in one episode. And that's a good thing. Good for me. I know I'm going to talk about it on my next podcast. But let me fall back on track. And like I said, our school bus, and so there was that going, like a little party going on in the back, and they were so vicious. It was vicious, and I think that's part of the reason why I identify with, there's a thing about having name brand clothes. I grew up in a time where if you didn't have a pair of shell toe Adidas, if you didn't have a pair of suede Pumas, if you didn't have the burgundy Lee jeans with the gray stripes, or if you didn't have dark siders or top siders, everything value was given based on what you appear to be and have. I can remember there were, we had a store, and it's still around today in many cities. It's called a Kmart. Heck, I'm not getting endorsements by Kmart, but I'll throw it out there. It's called Kmart. And one of the worst things that could happen, Kmart had some sneakers that they had. It was a generic sneaker. They had no name on it. And many of you had different names for them, but we called them Bobos where I grew up. They call them Bobos. And I can remember I had a girlfriend in the neighborhood. During the summer, we would go up to the community center for a free lunch. And you got a chance to intermingle with the kids, play a little bit, and, you got to see the pretty girls in the neighborhood. And I got this girl to go with me, so I had a girlfriend now. I didn't know having a girlfriend what you were supposed to do, but I knew I had one. So I got her to go with me, and that's how we phrase it where I'm from, right? And so I can remember that day I came out, and I was wearing some blue sneakers with, I think it had 4 stripes. And the 4th stripe was a definite sign that, okay, these ain't real name brand. And I got teased that I was wearing Bobos. And they had a song. It went, Bobos, they cost $1.99. Bobos, they make your feet feel fine. And I don't remember the rest, if there was the rest. But, silly now, but boy, when you are 11 and 12 years old, you've never felt that low before in your life. Maybe that was bullying back then, but what we called it was, that's just the way it was. And I guess you were going to either sink or swim based on your own temperament. And so I felt really badly, and what made it worse is that the girl I finally got to be my girlfriend, she told her friends that she didn't want to go with me anymore because she can't go with a Bobo boy. So here I am, all my little self-esteem is all across the ground. It's just horrible, and it's crazy how things work in the inner city, because there's a ranking, or there's a pecking order. You got poor, poor, and you got dirt broke, and I guess dirt broke people were at the bottom of the totem pole. Poor people were middle class, and poor people were the ones who all lived in a poor neighborhood but who were doing okay. But somehow or another, there was a classification system. And if you weren't wearing name brand clothes, you weren't at the top of that system, And that's just another example of being told or being made to think that you weren't good enough. When in fact, you were always good enough. You've never not been good enough. The problem is that you've never not believed that you were good enough. And today is that day that you realize that you are. Many of you have grown up in circumstances and situations. And some of you understand my voice, it was far worse. But you understand, and those of you who grew up in those inner cities understand what I'm saying. They're sharks. Let me tell you, it's like shark. It's like having blood in the water. And when you rode that school bus, there were jokes that they would tell. And if you weren't able to throw jokes back and make people laugh at somebody else to get the pressure off of you, you were in trouble. I can remember some kids crying on the bus. It's like watching someone's life force literally leave their body. It's like they're wounded. And people probably, albeit these are kids, but I got to tell you, we don't understand the power of our words. We don't understand the power of them. And I look around today, and ever so often in the media, you see children who commit suicide. They commit suicide because of the teasing, the bullying, and the things of that nature. Because they're not being accepted by their peers, they're outsiders. And you can see that. And nowadays, you've got a lot of kids, not that it never happened before, but people tend to gravitate towards people who are like them. But, when you're already ridiculed for being who you truly are, who you really feel, for liking what you liked, it becomes a difficult task to survive in the inner city. So you had to develop a few skills. You had to learn how to, A, be able to laugh at yourself. B, have a mama have a mother in whom I would rather face the wrath of God than face the wrath of my mama. So that made it a little easier. So when it was time to go home, oh yeah, he got to go home, the street lights on. My response would be like, yeah, but y'all don't know my mama. I got to be in the house, And if I'm not in the house, I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather deal with her. I'd rather not deal with her and get laughed by you. Let me say that straight. I would rather be laughed at you all and not get in trouble with my mom than sit up there and act like I'm cool. And I think a part of it is that a lot of times people in those adverse situations are introduced to so much stuff at such an early age until, I want to say, they grow up fast. But just because you have an experience at an early age doesn't make you mature when it comes to that experience or condition. It doesn't mean that your mind is ready to fully process that thing. It doesn't mean that. It simply means that you've got this outlier of which you've got nothing else to present it against to know how to respond. You don't have anything or any experience from which to replicate to know how to react in the situation. So you do what at that time you think is natural. And a lot of times we reject things and we laugh at the things we don't understand, and we laugh at the people who are doing the things that we don't understand. But what we don't realize is that, and as I've been told before by my mentors, and as I will share with you, the universe is always at work. The universe is always at work. The day that you realize your destiny, that you understand what your personal calling is, and you verbalize that thing, and you write that thing down, and with your heart you stake claim to wanting that thing, then the universe has no choice other than to conspire to bring to you exactly what you want. The problem is, for many of us, is that the universe takes too long, in our opinion. It takes too long. Guys, this stuff is at work. It's at work when we're sleeping. It's at work when we're awake. It's at work for us when we have what we call bad days, bad moments. But guys, if we learned how to hang on, how to keep believing, even when it's only us who believe, when we learn how to shut out the negative voices, when we learn how to surround ourselves with people who think like us, when we surround ourselves with people who want to make sure that you succeed, regardless of whether they believe completely or they don't believe completely, because your dream is something that is yours, Those people that simply want to see you happy. When you start surrounding yourself with those type people, you begin to develop a clearer path to reaching your dream, to reaching your destiny, to reaching your goal. So guys, let me just recap, and I'll read again as I close out that first paragraph from the introduction of The Alchemist. He says that the first obstacle, he says that we're told from childhood onward that everything we want to do is impossible. We grow up with this idea, and as the years accumulate, so too do the layers of prejudice, fear, and guilt. There comes a time when your personal calling is so deeply buried in our soul as to be invisible, but it's still there. And guys, I am a living witness that personal goal, that calling is still inside. It's part of the reason why I'm sitting here in this podcast sharing this with you, giving you a little more personal information than I normally would, just a little. It's still there. And I've got to believe if it's still there for me, for those of you all who are not living your dreams, it's still there for you. Guys, this is Lou Riley signing off with another episode of the Lou Riley Live Podcast. Be sure to visit me on iTunes and subscribe to my podcast, or you can visit the link to my homepage. I'm across several different social networks, depending on where you find me. Wherever you listen to me from, please click subscribe. I want to share this information with you. I want to eventually have dialogue, bring other people on, do some interviews and things of that nature. So this is part one of this series of, are you afraid of your dreams, or are you afraid of the work that your dreams are going to require? So this is Lou Riley signing off. You all have a great one. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.